Welcome back everyone. We hope you enjoyed the previous video, and this video is about the talk from Dr. Adriana Imniti. So Adriana is a professor of computer science and engineering at the University of South Florida, and her research lies at the intersection of distributed system and social computing. So in her talk, she described how we use machine learning models to understand the social media user activities and interactions on social media platform. If you use a lot of social media and also interested in this topic, please keep watching this.
I hope you're ready for our next keynote speaker. So we'll have a talk by Adriana Jamnitsky. I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's a professor of computer science and engineering at the University of South Florida, and she's currently joining us from 7 a.m. in the morning. So thank you very much for joining. Her research lies at the intersection of distributed systems and social computing. The overarching goal for current work is empirical analysis of phenomena in online social environments and designing solutions for modeling them. And her work has been funded by the National Science Foundation, the Office of Naval Research, and by DARPA. And she also holds a PhD degree in computer science from the University of Chicago. She is an ACM distinguished member, an IEE senior member, and a recipient of the National Science Foundation Career Award. Her current talk today will be about modeling multi-platform information diffusion in social media, data-driven observations, and this talk will mainly discuss challenges encountered in the effort of modeling social media activity in various contexts, from announcements of software vulnerabilities to online reactions during political crisis. So I'd like to give the floor now to Anda, and you can have a talk for the next half hour. So go ahead.
Thank you, Linda. Hello, everybody. You will see soon the sun rising in Florida was reflected on my face. So good morning. My talk is about what we can see in social media activity in our effort of modeling it. And as we all know, social media affects the world. These are just examples from the last month or so of news. One example is, for example, from BBC News, is an overview of the effects of the disinformation campaign against the White Helmets. The White Helmets are a Syrian volunteer organization who is in charge, basically, of providing medical evacuations for the people caught under bombs sent by the Assad regime. That disinformation campaign is well documented, and it was meant to discredit the White Helmets and to stop the funding that went into these rescue operations. The second example is perhaps you have seen how a group of people on Reddit coordinated to buy shares for GameStop and AMC. These are companies that were hurt very badly by the pandemic. GameStop, for example, is a company that sells games in brick and mortar stores. So of course, everything was closed and they were going down financially. And this group of Reddit users decided that they want to have a say in it, and they started buying shares. The shares went up, and the people in Wall Street who were short selling, who were betting basically on the shares going down, suffered financially. Then the third example is, again, US centric. As you know, some rioters mobbed the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. at the beginning of January. Of course, they coordinated online, but that's not the point. The point is that after that, they documented what they did, which was illegal, by posting information online, which of course helped authorities to identify them and to make arrests. So the social media and the physical world are very well interconnected. It would be nice if we would be able to simulate how social media activity happens. And why would that be? We would understand what are the forces that shape online discussions. And by understanding them, we can also test intervention scenarios. For example, if you have a disinformation campaign going on, which is the case, for example, with COVID vaccines and COVID treatments, and many other things, in fact, election and so on, then you might be able to test scenarios of how you could limit the damage, and test it in a simulated environment that you could ideally trust, and then take the best scenarios from this environment and place them in the real world. So this is the focus of our work. We're trying to simulate social media activity that reacts realistically to the many forces with which it interacts. And this talk will present 3 scenarios of where social activity behaves differently from, or in particular ways. One is an organic evolution of discussions in the context of software vulnerabilities in Reddit and Twitter. The second one is the coordinated campaign against the white helmets, where we will see signs of inorganic user interactions. And the third one is a scenario in which the social media reaction is very well timed with the real events, the political events. So first, the discussions on software vulnerabilities. Now, you know, software has bugs, and when those vulnerabilities, software vulnerabilities, are discovered in pieces of software that are extremely well used, they get a so-called CVE ID, an identifier that describes a software vulnerability and is recorded into a public database. Now, this makes the news and is often discussed in social media. And what it means in terms of impact is when the software vulnerability is first discovered and until its public disclosure, which means the recording in the public data set, there is this black risk phase in which malicious actors could exploit the vulnerability and attack and do damage to a large population if the software is very widely used. And then after the public disclosure, it is known by everybody that that software is vulnerable to what sort of attack. And for a while, there is a gray or white risk phase in which people are aware and know what they are looking for, well, how to maybe try to protect through other means, until the official patch release of the software. So it's important when this public disclosure happens, how well people are aware of, before the public disclosure, of the risks, and of course, how quickly the patch is released. So we're looking at how the CVE identifiers, how the software vulnerability identifiers are being discussed in social media. And we're looking at Reddit and Twitter. We believe that these are not politicized topics of discussion. So what we see is organic behavior is how people react to. It's also quite specialized. Therefore, you will have perhaps more professional people talking in the software industry, or just programming volunteers who are discussing this. So what do we see? We see in these 2 different platforms that Reddit discusses a much smaller set of software vulnerabilities than Twitter does. However, they discuss it before. Their focus is somewhat deeper. You see more certitude in their posts versus more questions in the Twitter posts. And their discussions are before the public release of the new CVE ID. Why does it matter? It matters because you could use the platforms to catch different signals. You can get early warning from Twitter on a larger variety of vulnerabilities, but you get deeper information from Reddit. And you also get earlier information, useful information from Reddit. We could also use, and we did this, to take the signals from Reddit and Twitter and try to model or to predict, if you want, to simulate how the GitHub repositories that would be affected by these software vulnerabilities would react in terms of number of events. And what this plot really shows is that we can get close by to the magnitude of events that happen on the software repositories. That would be, updates to the software, or even downloads, pulls of the software, such that people investigate what happens with the related vulnerability. So this is organic behavior, and what we see is very different way the two communities, the Twitter and Reddit community, react to the same type of information. Therefore, we need to look at the different platforms in different ways. That would be the takeaway message. What do we look is at the white helmets and the information operation against the white helmets. So again, the white helmets is a civilian volunteer organization in Syria and operates also in Turkey. Their main objective is they claim to stay apolitical. They don't take sides. They function in parts that are held by the rebels, by the people who are against the Saddam regime or the Assad regime. And their main objective is to save lives, to save the people who are caught under bombardments. They are known for their white helmets that are part of their equipment, and they became the target of the Russian-led disinformation campaign because of their cameras that are mounted on the white helmets and that provide evidence of the attacks by the government against civilians. These are chemical attacks, and there are all sorts of bombs that are forbidden by international treaties. And there is a long history of the white helmets working in this space. They were founded in 2014. But in 2016, a Netflix documentary on white helmets appeared, and in 2017, in February, it got an Oscar for Best Documentary. Meantime, there are more attacks in which they were involved, and so on. The data we have analyzed, and I'm presenting in this talk, is 4 months from April to July. It includes various other attacks. The type of disinformation that happens in this space is to discredit the white helmets. So the white helmets are in fact staging the attacks. The attacks are not real. This is the disinformation. This is the message. This is the agenda. And in the end, the objective is to delay or to stop the funding that goes typically from the Western countries towards this organization. So what did we see? We look in this case at two platforms, YouTube and Twitter. And the objective is to understand how information travels and how is it used, or pardon, how is it promoted by different users. First, we see that information is everywhere, that people over the world are engaging in these conversations. The data collected that we analyzed was collected based on keywords, white helmet related keywords. So Syrian civil defense, which is their official name, but also white helmets in various languages, including Arabic, Russian, Italian, I suspect Dutch as well. And despite the fact that data was collected based on just a keyword that was not politically charged, we see big evidence of disinformation. The majority of the messages and of the users who express these messages are part of the anti-white helmets campaign. But just some examples, and there is more information in the papers I'm citing at the bottom of the page. But out of the 76 videos that have been posted or commented during these 4 months of analysis, we see that 62 videos received duplicate comments. So it happens that some people or groups of users, different accounts, post the very same message with just a modification at the beginning or at the end, or just an emoji changed, to different videos. In fact, 241 comments, which are the blue nodes in this case, have at least one duplicate. The duplicates are connected in the picture by orange links. So basically, this is not something that you see, not the same comment is posted on different videos, on different channels, sometimes even by different users. Another sign of unusual activity is this series of 4 messages posted supposedly by 4 different accounts. This sequence is posted in the same order on 2 different videos posted in 2 different channels. The channels are Lift the Veil, which is a well-known conspiracy theory promoting channel, and the other one is RT, which is Russia Today. And you see the messages being posted, the very same message being posted at minutes distance. So this is again a behavior that you can't really see in real interactions, or you can't really explain by in normal, let's say, interaction online. But what does Twitter do? What Twitter's role in this campaign is basically to act as a megaphone. What the promoters of this campaign do, they basically inject URLs, typically to alternative media sites, again promoting conspiracy theories and promoting this revealing of the real truth again of the white helmets. They are promoting these sites by injecting URLs into quotes and replies. There are 25% of the URLs are injected via quotes and replies in this data set, compared to the 1% injected in the same way in the security vulnerability mentions that I discussed before. Also, links to YouTube videos and links to alternative media sites are bundled together a lot and sent in the same messages. So basically, they are promoting the same message by showing that, look, this site also makes this point, and this site makes this point. There is also a big presence of state-sponsored, in addition to this known alternative media nonsense conspiracy theory promoting sites. You see Sputnik News and Russia Today in Clarity of Signal is one of these nice conspiracy theory sites. You see also reputable mainstream media, The Guardian, Telegraph, I don't know, but BBC. Typically, these mainstream medias have been linked together with alternative media, and the message in those messages is that look how the mainstream media lies and the real truth is somewhere else. So this is the coordinated campaign, basically where we see bizarre user interactions, unusual user interactions, unusual promotion of content, and the high presence of URLs from sites that are of shady reputation. The third scenario I want to present is a different set of challenges, which is how social media reacts to external events. In fact, in the example I gave before with the white helmets, you don't see much correlation between news and the activity on Twitter. In Venezuela, for example, what happened in the early 2019 was a time of political crisis that started with Maduro being re-elected as president and people don't trust in the election results, and then having Juan Guaido declaring declared interim president, and then many countries supporting Guaido and asking for a redo of the elections. At the same time, people protested. Venezuela goes through a long economic and social crisis for quite long. So it was a moment of hope in which people got out on the streets, hoping that the regime can change and they can go back to some level of economic comfort. What I'm showing in this picture, the time series of the protests and violence that happened in that period, the first 3 months of 2019, as recorded in a public data set that is not related to social media. So this one is recording real life events. In this case, it's the ACLED, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. This is manually curated data set that has a bit of lag. So typically a week, 2 weeks until information is recorded in the data set, but it has high accuracy of recording the real events. So they record protests, they record riots, battles, war events, violence against civilians, all sorts across the globe. So this is one recording of real life physical events that can be used as a memory, right, of what happens. Then there is another data set that is of interest in this case of recording what's happening. It's GDELT, which is recording, basically, it's a Google Run project that reacts to news, extracting from information from news and publishes in some form that shows who are the actors involved in the conversation and what are the messages being sent. And then we look at this. So GDELT and ACLED are recording sort of exogenous data, right? The real world data. And then we have the digital reactions on Reddit, on YouTube, and on Twitter. And what you see is the timelines of on all these platforms for this time series of these platforms, the number of events in each. And you see some coordination, right? You see the main peaks aligned in response to events. Maduro is re-elected on January 10. Guaido is interim president on January 23rd, I think. Then there is a concert organized. It's called International Aid, and the purpose is to bring international aid into Venezuela. This is organized by the opposition to Maduro. Therefore, Maduro organizes his own concert, and the military stops any coming of international aid into Venezuela. Then there is a series of national power outages, which of course plays havoc to recording or to reacting on social media, because people in Venezuela don't have power to connect. And then Russian troops arrive on the airport in Caracas in an attempt to supposedly have joint intervention, joint training with the Venezuela, with the Maduro forces, but it's seen as a threat towards the opposition. So some things to notice. Again, the events are different, pardon, the platforms respond a bit different. YouTube responds a bit later. Twitter is right on spot, and its attention span, of course, is down very quickly. Reddit, the conversations take off and last a bit longer. GDELT responds a bit late, but then it has a consistent signal that shows the attention of the world and of the media is on Venezuela. And ACLED records only the protests, so you see protests going up and down depending on what was happening in the political scene. So the intuition would be that you take GDELT, you take ACLED, and you understand what's happening in each of these other platforms. And it is true if you're looking at the big picture, but if you're looking at topics and you're trying to break down into various finer granularity, but still decent granularity topics, you have more of a challenge, because these topics in Twitter, as shown here, do not correlate as well with this, outside events. For example, there is a discussion of Maduro dictator. That is a constant, this is around here, it's a constant discussion over the entire month. But then you have arrests which are responding to protests, and this is again highly variable. Moreover, what happens is on different platforms, you have the attention is on different types of events. For example, in YouTube, the bigger bubbles are related to some conversations that are not seen at the same interval of time in the other platforms. And at the same time, in the news are focusing on other things that the discussions, for example, on Twitter, on Reddit, and on YouTube. So the signal from these exogenous platforms are changing over time. All right, so what I told you is that there are very complex forces that shape information diffusion in social media. Some are platform-specific features. For example, Reddit users are engaged in more discussions and more conversations, while Twitter users are basically broadcasting some news rather and making short comments, but not going deep or long over the same things. Then you have coordinated operations that on one hand you want to catch, on the other hand you want to be able to model such that you see where they lead in the long term. And then you have the physical world events that affect the conversation on social media. All these are happening at different granularity of time, and especially when you focus on different topics, you see different patterns in different platforms. So what this means for modeling multi-platform social media activity, it's hard. It depends on the granularity in which you're trying to model to see if you get the things right. It's very hard to get the peaks of activity, but especially to get the peaks at the right moment. You might see a peak because of what's happening in ACLED and GDELG, but you might see it too late and you place it at a different time, for example. Cross-platform diffusion is difficult because you have very different magnitudes of or amplitudes of activities in Twitter versus YouTube, for example. And the quality of simulations, if you are to measure how well you're doing, there are so many metrics, so many ways of measuring performance that you end up having quite a challenge figuring out how well you're doing, because you're doing well in some metrics and not so well in other metrics. So this is what I had to say. It's a very interesting topic that is both challenging scientifically and also with potential real world impact if we understand these problems and are able to address them.
And thank you very much for your very inspiring talk. I think we have some questions coming in. I'm gonna take first the question from Lito. He's saying, what do you think are the reasons for the difference in reactions behaviors between different platforms? Is it about the platform, the audience, or something else?
It's a hard to pin down answer. Some differences are coming from the community. For example, the Reddit users talking about vulnerabilities, they are the professionals who are going into the Reddit subreddits related to software development and so on. While Twitter is more like for everybody and it's easy to retweet. So it's community related. Second is how easy it is for a platform, how easy it is to contribute to a platform. We looked, for example, at GitHub repositories as well. It's much harder to contribute something to GitHub, to create an event on GitHub compared to retweet, right? If you are to contribute code, to be taken into be taken seriously, at least it takes a lot of work. And then and also on YouTube. YouTube, it's you have a video, it maybe takes a bit more time than just to retweet or to tweet something on Twitter. And then there are the features of the platforms, including the algorithms that promote content on each platform that are really opaque, and you don't know what comes there, if it's really manipulated by a lot of other users interacting with the content, or it's a coordinated effort, or it's a grassroots effort of the algorithm promoting a particular content. So it's many reasons for making platforms react differently to the same event.
Thank you very much. I think we have to thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. So if you want to watch other videos, please check our playlist.